Mark, are we ready? Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Truth Wanted. I am your host, Objectively Dan, and joining today with me is a very, 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 very special guest, someone who I would say is probably the most requested guest host I've ever had. I literally get messages every single week asking, when's Shannon Q coming on? When's Shannon Q coming on? Anyway, here she is in the flesh, coming over from Nova Scotia, Canada. It is Shannon Q, everybody. Give it up. Woo! We do have a bit of a live studio audience here tonight, which is awesome. We've been starting to get more and more people come into the studio a bit more, which is great. Shannon, first, I need to apologize and let everybody know I messed up. I told Shannon the wrong time. I got my time zones confused. Apparently, that college education wasn't enough. But we've got it all sorted out. She's here, and we're going to make this show happen. How are you doing tonight, Shannon?
Good. Very excited to be here. I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you for having me.
Yes. I've been looking forward to this a long time. I've been telling Shannon since really Truth Wanted started. I really wanted her as a co-host. Shannon Q, for those of you who don't know, has a YouTube channel where she talks about atheism, but she also talks about psychology and the kind of intersection between religion and psychology, along with tons of other stuff. Shannon, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about your channel and what you do on that.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So I have a channel that's just called Shannon Q because I'm not particularly creative.
And Q stands for quail, I believe.
Yes!
If I recall correctly. Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's it. That is exactly what it stands for.
That's not actually what it is.
Dan's doxing me and just we on the channel, I have live conversations. I try to have complex conversations in a respectful and productive, mutually beneficial manner about ideas and concepts that are generally contentious and difficult to discuss, so that we can model better conversations in this realm, in this environment that we exist within. And I also do more focused, edited, produced videos where I kind of tear apart and dissect the intersections between faith and psychology and how we operate as people. And I generally try to produce and cite as much peer-reviewed research as I can in my description and give nice, concise summaries in nice, neat little packets in the videos so that people can utilize them. And I also provide resources in all of my videos so that people who might need assistance can find them. And some of those resources are Freedom from Religion, the Clergy Project, and Recovering from Religion, so that people who may be on the precipice and in need of help and aren't sure where to turn have places to go and feel like they're heard and listened to and supported. So that's what we do.
So a lot of people on YouTube, at least in like the atheist YouTuber sphere, everybody has kind of an angle. I mean, myself included, we all kind of have a specialty kind of hobby topic that we kind of delve into. You, of course, you talk a lot about psychology. What was it that inspired you to go on YouTube and start talking about religion and psychology in this particular way?
Oh, it's a really good question. Okay, so one of the reasons that I decided to delve into it was because I actually I have a degree in psychology, and I focused in perceptual cognition and communication theory. And there was sort of two facets that caused me to decide to enter into the public discourse. The factor one was that I saw a lot of conversations being conducted that were incredibly contentious and non-productive. And as a viewer, I was sitting on the sidelines becoming increasingly frustrated because the topics that I wanted to suss out in my own mind and find out more about weren't really being hashed out. Instead, what was happening was there was two people who were just kind of having a chest beating competition about who could own the other one so that they could high five their own team. And that was frustrating to me. Mm-hmm. And I knew if it was frustrating to me, it was probably frustrating to others. So I thought that I would instead just kind of delve into the conversations and ask the questions that I was screaming at my phone.
Yeah.
Myself.
I got to say, like, one of the reasons why I started Truth Wanted was very similar in that respect. I wanted to kind of change the way that we have these kinds of conversations. And you do that very well on your channel. You host live streams talking to people. You talk to more Christians through live streams than most, like, at least atheist YouTubers that I know, and you do it very, very well. Like, what do you think is, like, your secret when you talk to these people? Like, I mean, I don't want to say secret because that sounds like you're doing something manipulative or you're doing something deceptive. I mean, like, really, you're just having very good, genuine conversation with people that has been really popular. Like, you've gotten over 7,000 subscribers now. Last time I checked, right? I mean,
over eight, actually.
8,000. Oh, that's so awesome. I'm sure you're gonna get twice as much as that in the next couple of months. I'm wondering, like, what do you think is your kind of special sauce, your special spice when it comes to having conversations with other people?
I'm not attempting to win the conversation. I don't enter into a conversation with the attempt to defeat the person I'm dialoguing with. My intention when entering a conversation is to allow the person to feel comfortable enough that they can share their insights so that I can better understand them, because that's what I'm legitimately interested in. I'm interested in what brings people to belief, and attacking them, cornering them, and making them feel as though they don't deserve to be understood or are foolish is no way to kind of understand how people come to the place that they are. And if I want to be intellectually honest, I have to be able to and willing to scrutinize my own ideas and beliefs. And if I am too busy asserting them, I'll never have the chance or fair opportunity to analyze them. So if I want to know things that are right, I should be willing to scrutinize them myself. And a part of that is allowing myself to have dialogues with other people in a manner where I legitimately listen to them and carefully scrutinize and analyze fairly the things that they have to say. So people feel respected and listened to. And I think that's all anybody really wants in a conversation. So perhaps that's my secret.
I like that. So just kind of listening to people. You're not trying to win at anything. This isn't a debate necessarily. This isn't like you trying to prove your point and win points for your side. This is more of I want to come to understand how you got to where you're at, and maybe you can understand where I'm at and kind of close the bridge there. Yeah.
Sure. Exactly. So that somebody can better relate to either one of us in the conversation. I think.
That's really fascinating. That's really fascinating. I love that. I love that. What I want to know too is you talked about this idea of self-scrutinizing, like kind of catching yourself when you're wrong. Since you started Shannon Q like as a channel and doing that whole project, has there anything that you've learned about yourself or learned about topics that you've been discussing that you've kind of changed your position on through kind of self-analysis, or maybe somebody kind of pointed it out?
I don't know if there's anything that I've really changed, to be honest with you, and ardently held belief on currently. I found more nuance within things that I believed. I've discovered more about how I come to believe the things that I do. There's things that I was very, very sure of that now I'm more interested in exploring to make certain that I am sure of them. So it's created a broader journey for me, but there's nothing that's particularly changed. Oh, I'm so sorry. My son just yelled my name.
That's okay. Well, that's fine, because we've got some ad reads and some things we want to do right now. We have, I say ad reads, they're really announcements, I should say. Everything that's coming here is from the ACA, that is the Atheist Community of Austin, where this show is being filmed right now. I have a few things I want to show you. First, we have a very special video talking about our Valentine's Day secular sexuality show with Shelley Siegel. It's going to be a concert happening here in downtown Austin. We have a clip that we'd like to show you, and we're going to go ahead and play that right now.
Make this Valentine's Day one to remember. It's time to get sexy. Live in Austin, Texas, an intimate performance by recording artist Shelley Siegel follows a live taping of secular sexuality. Food is included and drinks will be available for purchase. Get your tickets now by going to eventbrite.com and search for secular sexuality. That's eventbrite.com, search secular sexuality.
Yes, that is awesome. 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 And we got this venue picked out, guys. You got to look at this thing on Google Maps. It is amazing. More information on that is going to be on our Atheist Community of Austin Facebook pages, and I believe on our website as well. And you can probably find some more about that in the description or in the chat of this video right here as well. A few more things I want to announce. The ACA is proud to announce our next guest for our Q&A. This is Godless Engineer. You can join us on Wednesday, January 30th. And on our Discord channel, if you're familiar with that platform, go ahead and download Discord and see him on there. You can actually ask him questions live. It's going to be at 1800 Central Time. You can ask Godless Engineer about anything. It is an AMA. He will be on for about an hour, I believe, and definitely check that out. We will have a recording of that available on the Discord as well. I see Shannon is back and joining with us. One more thing I want to go ahead and get out there before we get back to the show. Our January newsletter is out. We have a couple of cool articles in there. We have one about atheists and foxholes. My good buddy Anthony Magnabosco has an article about street epistemology. Please definitely check that out. More information is available in the description as well as our website. Hi, Shannon. How's it going?
Hi, I'm so sorry.
You are totally fine. Like I said, we are running on a different time than what we originally had agreed upon, but you have graciously come here anyway. Are you ready to talk to some people on the phone?
I can't wait.
Awesome. Well, we have a couple people on the line, but I want you guys to go ahead and still call in if you can. Our number is 512-686-0279. Again, that is 512-686-0279. It's right there in the corner if you're watching this live on the YouTube stream. Please call in. We have some open lines, whether you're a theist, atheist. If you want to talk to us about whatever, you can talk to one of our call screeners and we'll get you on the line here live with Shannon Q. Again, like the most requested guest host tonight. So I'm expecting some really good phone calls from people. I want to go first to Alex in Rhode Island. And Alex wanted to, talk to us about attributing the natural, attributing the supernatural to the natural. Alex, are you there with us on the line?
Yes, I am, guys.
Hey, Alex, how's it going?
Hi, Alex.
Oh, not too bad. Hi. I love listening to your videos, by the way. It's great stuff to kind of have as a background noise to, kind of just get things done, listen to something good.
Now, I know you're talking about Shannon. You're definitely not talking about my videos, right?
Pretty much any of the atheistic YouTube channels I really like to listen to.
All of us.
Awesome.
Team effort.
Yeah. Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So basically, one of the things that kind of frustrates me is that people, people think, oh, if there's, beautiful plants and animals out in nature or in our lives, it must prove that there's some benevolent being that's made them for us and things like that. And one of my issues with that is it's such a subjective way of assessing things, because what I find beautiful and cute or something like that might be different than what somebody else finds beautiful and cute. And, by that same logic, if there's something that I find hideous looking or unpleasant, does that disprove the idea of a larger being, or does it disprove the idea that this larger being would be loving or anything?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there to a certain degree, because you're essentially saying that just the experience, the subjective experience of witnessing something and going through the assessment process internally and deciding whether or not it's something you find aesthetically pleasing or not isn't evidence. So it's a proximal distal stimuli scenario, as opposed to being saying that this is objectively beautiful based on any scenario where somebody's going to derive beauty. Beauty is something that is derived internally. It's a subjective assessment that we make as people. We make decisions about what's beautiful, and generally we make decisions evolutionarily about what's beautiful by discerning whether or not something is going to be healthy or beneficial to us. So the traits that we find, or if something's gonna spread symbiotically by utilizing us, it's we're more apt to pick something that we find aesthetically pleasing, or cultivate things that we find aesthetically pleasing. So things that are aesthetically pleasing that we pick and cultivate multiply. So it's not even just about the fact that it's subjective. We actively participate in perpetuating this beauty through the process of selection.
Yeah, humans are, selected, to look for colors and contrasts, particular shapes and symmetries. It's, there's nothing mystical about it. And I feel like people kind of condition their kids, people on Instagram will post like sunsets and say, hashtag God or something like that. And, whether or not this God they're talking about is responsible for it, you can't use it to establish it. And it's not really necessary for that thing to exist. And even whether or not it benefits us is subjective, because different things. Some people have allergies. Some people can't process certain things, and something that's beneficial to us may not be beneficial to another species, and vice versa.
I'm reminded of, David Attenborough has those Planet Earth documentaries, and I remember there's the one, I don't know what species it is, but there's that bird that likes to pick up the kind of pretty kinds of trash that it sees to kind of build some of its nests. Yeah, and it's like, if we can observe that in nature, we can see, these are animals who find something at least pleasing about this, and not even for like a necessarily, a defense mechanism, or even it provides no specific evolutionary advantages in some cases, right? It doesn't help the birds stay any warmer in its nest. Sometimes it's at least from our observations, it appears that they just kind of pick things that just kind of seem pretty to them or attractive to them. And we even find this in evolution as well with like as Shannon was kind of talking about, animals do select on certain kinds of things that they find, you could say beautiful, you could say attractive in some ways when they're looking for mates. So you can definitely see where this idea of the human concept of beauty can arrive in a sense from evolution and kind of natural forces. There doesn't necessarily have to have a supernatural explanation to it at all. And that's why I've had conversations with people as well where they're like, oh, well, this is so beautiful. How could you just say that this just came from nothing? It's like, well, we only say it's beautiful because we think it's beautiful. I mean, a bear doesn't think that's beautiful, or a fish doesn't think that's beautiful. This is purely something that we think is beautiful. There's not an objective beauty to it.
May I interject with something? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, go for it, Shannon.
I'm so sorry. I just wanted to do something nerdy for a second about about aesthetics. So when we talk about other animals, I don't know if anybody knows a lot about visual perception here, but how we perceive color, for example, is via there's rods and cones in the back of our eyes. Cones are concentrated on the fovea, which is where we perceive most of our color. So species of birds actually have an additional cone, so they can actually see more color than we can. So there are. Yeah, exactly. And I was actually there's a species of desert ant that can actually visually perceive polarization in the atmosphere. So when we look at perception, and this is where I'm going to be a nerd for a minute, the argument that aesthetics exist for us is a non-starter, because we're not even the most capable amongst the animal kingdom to perceive the aesthetics that exist. We fall short. So if they were created for us, and there's birds that can see them far better and appreciate them more, then that calls some things into question too, I think.
Have you seen those pictures of the flowers with the nectar guides, and they have to shine a special filter on them so that we can see that there are like dots leading up to the middle for like bees and everybody who needs to come in and get the pollen and nectar? These are things that are, evolved from the plant so that it can reproduce itself. Yeah. Not for us humans to just peek at it. And, about the bowerbirds, it's actually detrimental for some of these animals to be, going around plucking materials. One, they draw attention to predators, and two, they take a lot of energy to go collect stuff just to, attract a mate. Beauty can have, quite a cost.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's basically a dark side of beauty.
Yeah, another thing, and too. Oh, sorry, go on. Keep going. Yeah.
So there was another quick thing that I wanted to talk about that goes along the lines of, it's not really beauty related, but that goes along the lines of natural and supernatural being kind of conflated with each other. But finish up with what I figured I'd just let you. You were probably going to say something about beauty.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, like, as far as this idea of we're here to appreciate God's beauty and stuff, like, there are people who are, like, born blind and born without senses. And I'm squinting right now because my contacts are blurring, and normally I have to wear glasses, and Shannon wears glasses. And this idea, there is a set of beliefs out there that goes somewhere along the lines of we were meant to appreciate God and worship God and all of his glory and majesty and things. And there are some people who are just physically incapable of doing that. So either they're here for some sort of other kinds of purpose, or, the argument just kind of doesn't work. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense. But you were calling about the natural and the supernatural, and I do want to hear a little bit more about that.
Actually, that's funny because I can't smell, and that can be a problem. But yeah, like I can't perceive everything around me. But anyway, the other thing is, so my mother's not like super religious or anything, but she has this, and she has some like weird justification for it. She has this idea that there's like something that we go to after death, and that there's some, the concept of a God looking after us. And so she works with, people who are terminally ill, and she says, oh, but when the person is, dying, and they're becoming peaceful, and it looks like they're going to a better place, so that has to prove that they're going to a better place. And, I have to think, one, when your brain is shutting down and you're deprived of oxygen, you're not able to show tension or anything of that sort. You're just, becoming unaware of everything going on. So, of course, we're going to perceive that as looking peaceful. But two, you're thinking of somebody who's, in a first world country in a hospital bed, probably being given medicine to alleviate pain and to make them feel calm. If you were to, tie somebody to a chair and stab them to death, they probably wouldn't look peaceful. I don't see why somebody looking like they're at peace when they're dying is going to demonstrate that they're going somewhere majestic.
It doesn't. It's an attribution, very likely. That I can imagine that would be very, very difficult for her to constantly having to witness. That wouldn't be something that's easy, and you would have to find lots of ways to consistently reconcile in order to be okay, almost having to witness that all of the time. That could be a manner that could be her perceiving some sort of, external visual stimulus and associating it or affiliating it with the attribute of calmness, even though that may not even be the internal state of the person at the time who's actually experiencing it, but is incapable of communicating it. It's just a physical manifestation of that. And her perceiving that may be a way of it being okay to witness that without feeling a lot of internal conflict over and over and over and over again. That it may be a reconciliation. I mean, I haven't met her, so I don't want to say that that's absolutely the case, but I think that it's within the realm of plausibility. Have you had discussions with her? Is there anything, do you think that she really ardently believes that this is the case because that's evidence to her, or do you think that this is something that gives her a degree of comfort and that's how she's arrived to this conclusion?
She said that it's more comforting, so it's easier to believe that. And, I'll say just because it's comforting doesn't mean it's true. And, right. She thinks it's crude if I just say, oh, your brain's lacking oxygen, which is why, you look like you're about to fall asleep or something like that. And it's not that I'm trying to be crude about it. I'm just trying to, whether or not you are going to be going into some heaven, I have no way of proving this, but, if that is what you're actually doing, that has to be proven, with something that's not easily explained by just what we know happens to your brain when there are, oxygen deprivation and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, near-death experiences are really interesting to kind of look at and study. There's all kinds of cases that you can look at and say, look, these people had these common experiences. They're all seeing Jesus when they're before they die. That has to be some sort of evidence. But if you do the same thing, if you look into other cultures with other religious beliefs, you find the similar kinds of patterns. It seems that our culture and the way that we understand our cultural ideas of death influence the way that we attribute things about death and kind of our experiences hereafter, and other people dying in our lives as well. We tend to find significance in events when people die with contributing factors around that. I think lots of people have stories of when they felt someone they knew like pass on when they watched them die, and like they felt their spirit in the room. And you know, the truth is, when an event like that happens, that's a powerful thing. It affects people emotionally, and it causes people to make judgments and think about things in ways that they don't normally think about. So there's a very, very good scientific explanation for why all of these things occur. But unfortunately, it's not always polite to point that out, especially when it's during that particular time. So.
Yeah, there are also people who have near-death experiences and they say it was just blackness or there was really nothing, you know. There's that too. And I've heard of people who were religious at one point and who had a near-death experience and said, you know, I saw nothing when I was, you know, dying on the table.
Yeah, I've also heard that as well. It's interesting to see different people's, you know, perspectives on how that happens. But I'm glad that you're at least finding a little bit of comfort in talking to us about it. I know it can be stressful when there's people in our lives who don't really see eye to eye on this kind of stuff, especially when it's such a controversial topic with some people.
Well, it's clear you put a lot of thought into a lot of this too, Alex. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for you know, putting so much thought into it and analyzing these ideas.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're going to go ahead and go on to the next caller, but thanks again for calling, Alex, and be sure to call again soon.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for some reason, Shannon, there's a lot of people that call in that like to talk about near-death experiences and, death in particular on this show. I think it's just, I don't know what it is. I guess it's just a topic of human culture that just fascinates people and inspires people to make really great changes in their lives. I mean, obviously, death is a very momentous occasion for people. It's the passing of people that they love and people who influence them. And I can see how other people's passings can sort of inspire ideas that aren't exactly logical or don't exactly hold up when you look at them under a microscope.
Yeah, it's the thing we fear the most, not only for ourselves, but for the people that we love, and the thing that we know the least about what happens after. So I can see how it would be something that people like to discuss. It's great that people feel comfortable that they can do that and be listened to here, as opposed to, you know, it's an uncomfortable conversation. It's not an easy thing to dialogue about. So it's wonderful that you give people the opportunity to do it and feel comfortable. So thank you.
You do as well, Shannon. Definitely, if you guys haven't checked out Shannon's channel already, please be sure to subscribe. She has great conversations with people all across the religious belief spectrum and more. We're going to go ahead and go to our next caller. This is Jeff in Pennsylvania. Jeff, I think I have here that you wanted to talk to us about historical science and observational science and kind of the distinction between those two. Is that right, Jeff?
Yes. Hi, Dan. Shannon, how are you this evening?
Hi, Jeff. I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, thanks. Yeah, I was... I've been following recently the Atheist Experience show and some others that you put out in the Houston area on YouTube recently, and I heard one where a caller called in, kind of backing Ken Ham's position about historical science versus observable or experimental science, and I was listening to the dialogue, and I think it's a false distinction, but I didn't feel that the caller or the respondents on the show were really nailing it. So I felt a little bit frustrated, and I wanted to give it a shot myself here. So
okay, go for it.
Yeah. So I think the way I understand it is that Ken Ham sees historical science as something that is not necessarily observable or experimental in a laboratory in a very narrow way. And he sees the historical science as something that requires interpretation. And I don't think that science is one or the other, and I think there's many ways of advancing scientific knowledge. There's the simple experimental where you might look at oxidation being exothermic, for instance, right? And so you might have an experiment where you, under controlled conditions, do some sort of oxidation experiment and measure the temperature. And that's, repeatable and it's observable, and we can do that in the lab, and our kids can do it in our science fairs. But and that's fine. But it still requires interpretation. You still have to have a reason for the temperature increase. You have to connect one to the other. So it is interpretive. In one of the things that I'm sure we've all heard about are those early experiments with in the say 15th, 16th centuries, where people would put meat into closed containers, except they weren't perfectly closed or sealed, and so flies would lay their eggs on them, and a few weeks or months later, you'd open them up and you have maggots. And so people thought, okay, maggots come from meat, and you still need the causation. And so it's all interpretive. And so you also have theoretical science. I mean, Einstein's theory of relativity, it took many decades to prove what he was saying, but it didn't mean it didn't advance knowledge and advance thinking. There's data analysis with the ice cores in the human genome and computer models. One that I saw recently was, how Neptune spins in a very unique way, rotates in a unique way, and the sort of computer simulation came up with possible angles of impact for various mass and size bodies to strike it and cause that effect. And these all advanced scientific knowledge, but 3 of those categories aren't experimental or observational. And so I just think, Ken Ham, if you restrict science to this smaller box that he seems to want to put or legitimize, there's a lot that we wouldn't know. And so I think that's a false dichotomy.
Sorry, there was a bit of a lag there, and I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. I think I know a bit about Ken Ham.
You might say that.
Yeah, I mean, but I know
and Ken go way back, right?
Go way back. I think he only does it for certain fields. What he'll say is it needs to be observable, testable, and repeatable. And the reason he says that is because he's trying to create this false image that unless you can, unless A follows from B and then produces C, then it's not science. However, he doesn't have any issue within the ridiculous journal that he publishes going into the fields like geology, for example, and astrology, that he would himself, and biology, and that he would himself discount in legitimate academic circles. And one of the reasons that he does that is he needs to be able to, on its face, make it seem as though you can't trust what comes out of those fields. So he makes it seem in his verbiage when he's dialoguing about his thoughts on science that it's about the outcome, and it's about being able to reproduce outcomes. And he ignores the fact that science isn't reproducing outcomes. Science is a methodology.
Right. And Ken, if I can comment, I mean, Ken Ham's whole deal on, what is it, observable, testable, repeatable? It
needs to be observable, testable, and repeatable.
Okay. Can you do any of that with the Bible knowledge that he claims to know about certain historical facts of his interpretation? I don't think so. He's relying on historical scholarship in a sense, in the same way that, real historians have to rely on historical scholarship. The only difference is, of course, he's not really doing as much scholarship at all. It's more like finding what he already believes and then trying to go backwards and justify it from there. So I find it interesting that Ken Ham does kind of have this take on science when really his whole platform, he can't really do that same testing with the stuff that he claims to be true either. So, you can't win. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
He's attempting to replace science is what he's doing, with something that has the artifice of science, but is in fact not science at all in any meaningful way. So he needs to promote that rhetoric in order to convince people that what he's doing is science by consistently repeating what science is until they believe that that's what science is, when in fact it's not.
And he'll get
I think that's the issue, isn't it? I agree with what you just said about Ken Ham needs to promote those ideas in order to move, to have people believe what he wants them to believe, and so it's kind of his shtick, isn't it? But the problem isn't really that he does it. The problem is that people listen to it and believe him.
Correct. I completely agree. Yeah. The problem is that he's effective. That's the problem. The problem is that he is successfully shifting a certain group of people into thinking the things that he produced that have components that are akin to science and look familiar to what science is to somebody who's aware of how research methodology is done. I mean, this is a personal anecdote. The first time that I saw their journal, I was reading an article on human chimp DNA comparison on chromosome to chromosome analysis to find percentage similarity between human and chimp DNA. And I didn't realize they had a journal. And when I was told they had a journal, I thought that it was going to be like a magazine where they publish fluff piece. I did not realize that they literally make this look like a journal. It has an abstract, it has a methods section, like it is broken down as though it's a paper that's published in a standard journal. However, it is torn apart, not as technical, missing components, not well cited, circular citations exist. The previous research that anybody who's composing research or compiling research needs to cite previous sources to justify their research and also their conclusions and their hypothesis. His were self-citations or quote mines that were out of context. And there was only like 15 citations in one. And that was one with a lot of citations. That was the genetics paper. I've never read a genetics paper that had less than 30, to be perfectly honest with you. And this skipped over half the methods section. The methods section was a lot of filler about the computer program and the Excel format that they used and none of the actual methods. But if you're a layperson and you're looking at that, you're saying, oh, look at the science he's doing. He did science. This looks like science. And he needs to perpetuate that. And what's difficult is when a layperson enters into these dialogues, into this conversation, that saying science is observable, testable, and repeatable on its face is catchy, and it's almost right. It's almost right enough that he can obfuscate the truth. And that, like, he's clever. I'll give him that. I don't like him because he's clever. And because he's clever, he's convincing. He's compelling people who really want to hold on to their beliefs that there's science that backs it up, and there just isn't. I get personal about him. I don't like him.
Yeah. Well, I've seen him against others. I've seen the Ken Ham, Bill Nye debate, and I don't care for his presentation either. In fact, I thought his cleverness did score some points against Bill in that debate, unfortunately. But yeah, I agree with everything you said, Shannon, and I guess the one thing is that I would say that the antidote to that kind of cleverness in any kind of debate, in my opinion, is to have ready examples like, the theory of general relativity, for example, that are theoretical and had nothing to do with experimentation, but advanced the thinking years before the experimentation could be done. And
did it have to do with predictive models, though? It was predictive. It was still predictive model. Einstein had to wait for years for an eclipse to happen in order to see starlight refracting around the sun. He had to get somebody else actually to go, I think it was like to Africa or something, and use special paper in order to be able to capture this, to prove his theory. It was still predictive modeling, which is a valuable part of science. The issue isn't so much that it's not observable, testable, and repeatable, because to a certain degree it is when he's doing it. He's just using garbage methodologies, and he's not using predictive models. He's using models that are going from a desired outcome and working backwards to find proof for that outcome. And that is dramatically different than creating a predictive model and then designing an experiment to see if something is going to meet your prediction, or like whether or not you can reject the null hypothesis. Right?
Right.
Like,
well, I agree, but
he makes me so mad.
I think that fellow uses it in another way though too, right? I agree with what you're saying. He uses it he wants to use his own brand of science and justify it as rational and true science. But I think he also does. He attacks branches of science because they aren't, like historical geology, because they aren't, in his mind, observable and repeatable and experimental. And to my mind, that's where these examples can possibly contradict his thoughts. But I was kind of frustrated the way the atheist experience went, and I wanted to call in and just give a few of my own thoughts.
Yeah,
if you like that stuff, you should check out Apologia's channel, by the way. That's a channel that I work on, and that literally what we do all day, every day, is just do kind of what you just said to Ken Ham's nonsense. All day. Go check out Apologia.
Check out Apologia. I definitely want Paul on Truth Wanted sometime. We've definitely talked about it before. I think he'd make a great guest. Jeff, thanks for calling about this. This was some really great observations, and be sure to call again.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Have a good.
Oh, I cut him off right when he was saying goodbye. But yes, thank you, Jeff, for that call.
Dan, you're the worst.
I know, worst host in the world. Here's what I'll say about Ken Ham. First of all, Ken Ham, I know you're listening. Big fan of the show. You're more than welcome to come on Truth Wanted anytime you want. Anytime you want, bud. Call me up. I have the email, truth@atheist-community.org. By the way, any of you guys can email me. That is the email to check out stuff for the show. But yeah, Ken Ham, if you want to come on, let's have a conversation about that. I will say, Ken Ham, his Twitter, if you are not subscribed to his Twitter, you should be. Not for Ken Ham's tweets, but for the comments. I've never seen a man get so roasted so hard on Twitter. Every single post he makes, somebody has to come with the snappy comebacks.
I'm blocked.
It's funny. Sometimes I see Shannon on there.
I'm blocked.
Are you really blocked? Are you?
Yeah, he blocked me for quoting him Bible verses that contradicted his Bible verses.
Oh, of course. I think Paul is blocked from him too, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Okay. Well, there's definitely some funny stuff out there if you're not blocked from Ken Ham. You probably will be if you post enough times on there. Guys, well, we have full lines on right now. We have 6 callers on the line. We're going to take a special call here, it looks like, from Genetically Modified Skeptic on the line.
Damn it. I got a stalker.
Hey, guys.
Have you brought the memes, Drew? What's up?
No. Man, I can't be expected to bring the memes all the time. Sometimes you got to be a little bit serious. But
okay, that's a new one for you, but I'll take it.
Yeah, I concur.
It's okay. Dan, you're already enough of a joke. But anyway, so we'll go on.
All right, I'll take that out.
Okay. So I have a question for Shannon, which, I was thinking of asking her privately because we are friends and all that. But
you said, fuck it, we'll do it live.
I think. Yeah, exactly. So Shannon knows that she and I both have kind of this same group, or at least a very similar group of people contacting us fairly consistently, wanting a debate or a conversation or whatever. I don't do conversations quite in the same way, definitely not with the same frequency as Shannon. And I think I don't necessarily say more selective, but I do so few conversations like that, just because of the way I decide to spend my time, that I wonder, how does Shannon select among the people who want to talk to her, debate her, challenge her, whatever, and take on conversations with them? Because sometimes they're like really difficult people, and she's able to somehow make it work. So I'm wondering, Shannon, what's your selection process for like kind of picking people that you would talk to like that?
Okay, so it has
whichever will get her the most views. Just kidding. That's not
exactly
true. I'm not very good at that, actually. I'm the worst YouTuber in the world when it comes to self-promotion. So what I generally do in order to discern is, if it's somebody that I've had offline interactions with where I felt like the conversation would be valuable to take into the public forum, then I'll frequently do it. Or if I've been, if somebody's posed a question to me that I find interesting and they've demonstrated to themselves in our interactions offline, like elsewhere, like in the comment sections or in DMs or on Twitter or on Facebook or wherever it might be, that they've legitimately thought out their position and they're interested in having a dialogue about it, then I'll almost invariably give them the opportunity at some point in time in some fashion to come on the channel if they've demonstrated that they're respectful. Conversely, I do have some conversations that aren't. Now, that's a bit of a different selection process for me. So in those scenarios, what enters my mind is, how have I seen this be done in public? Like when you think about, so we'll use, you're probably thinking of incels maybe. So, because that was a recent one.
Mm-hmm.
So
Shannon, by the way, famous supporter of incels, just loves the movement. She's all about it.
Well, I am to a certain degree, because I don't think that anybody should be vilified specifically for being involuntarily celibate.
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, but when you think of,
she's not a big supporter of the movement, by the way. I just want to make that clear, because I don't know if the joke landed the way that I wanted it to.
On the contrary. However, one of the ways that bad ideas gain steam is by accumulating enemies. If they accumulate common enemies and they feel as though they're being persecuted by those people or consistently mocked by those people, then that strengthens their position by virtue of them feeling though they have no one to turn to but each other. And in this particular instance, I saw a lot of public dialogues taking place just because somebody wanted the opportunity to yell at them about how horrible they are without even attempting to understand how that happened. Because it happened. People become away for a reason. Right? Nobody just wakes up in the morning and decides, you know what, women have less neurons than men, and I like that's and they should be subservient to me. Like, there's a process that gets you to that point, and those things are worth understanding. In order to do that, sometimes you have to dialogue with the people that have gone so far down that road that it is very difficult to converse with them. But I've developed the ability to a certain degree, until I find out somebody's being harmed. I've learned that about myself. I've learned that once I get to the point that somebody's actively causing direct harm to somebody, I apparently have a switch that goes off. But up until that point, I think it's worthwhile. And if I see those conversations being conducted solely because you want to point and laugh at somebody, and I think that there's something valuable to be gleaned from understanding them better, so that they can maybe change the ways that they think and the way that they conduct themselves, then I will run towards those conversations, not just incels, but a lot of different conversations, because people deserve a chance. They deserve to try to be understood. And maybe if no one's ever tried to understand them, that's part of the reason they became the way that they are. So I don't know if that answered your question or was the crux of your question, but those are the two ways that I decide.
Yeah, I think that definitely does answer it. I'm wondering what are a couple of red flags that go up that would basically discourage you from pursuing a conversation with someone who wants one?
Okay, so if I'm the one screening the conversation, which isn't always the case, sometimes if I'm going on, let's say, the non sequitur show or somebody else's channel, there's somebody else screening for me. And generally, especially with the non sequitur show, they're trustworthy people. I know that they're doing their due diligence to screen the people that are being talked to. I will not engage in a public dialogue with somebody that I feel may have a severe mental disturbance that could be exacerbated by thrusting them into the public light. I just will not do that out of ethic or principle if I feel like that is the case. Somebody being verbally abusive doesn't deter me, because generally that can be diffused in my experience. Not always, but it can be sometimes. So if that speaks again towards the conversations that we may have had offline prior. Like, many engagements I've had have started out with somebody just screaming obscenities about me or at me, or not screaming, caps locking obscenities at me. And it's been able to be diffused. I mean, we're talking about contentious issues, and people come at them with a lot of, vitriol and fervor because they're carrying the baggage of every conversation they've had before this point with you about that same topic, and most of them probably haven't gone that well. So sometimes it takes time, but if it can't be diffused, it's because some people just want to troll. That is just a fact. Like, some people just want to set fire to the internet and watch it burn because it amuses them on a personal level. And usually after a few interactions, you can figure out who those people are. And I just kind of let them fade away because there's nothing productive about that, and search for the people that really, though they may be angry, want to continue the conversation once they realize that I'm going to listen and they can calm down.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, those are good answers. I think that helps me, and I imagine that for people who are just getting involved in kind of activism or just being on a certain side of social media like Twitter or whatever, I think that those answers should definitely be taken into account by people who are trying to get their start in having conversations. Because, I mean, as far as my opinion goes, Shannon is one of the best at having these kinds of conversations and is able to be productive. And so
that's my opinion too, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I was excited to see that Shannon was going to be on here. Also, I was excited by the amazing thumbnail that you guys have.
Yes.
For the show.
Yes. I have a friend of mine from high school, actually, who has agreed to start doing our art for this channel. Please let us know if you like it, and we will continue to use her for our thumbnail art. She is great. Please check out her. I think her Instagram is posted in our Twitter. It should be Prince EPD. I think that's what it is. Oh, I hope that's right. If not, we'll try to put a link. Hopefully, if you're in the chat right now, somebody can pull that link up. She's really great. I'm hoping she can continue to do the art for us. We will see. So
she killed it. I love it so much.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I asked to share it early because I loved it so much.
It's really, really great. Well, Drew, as always, you're a friend of the show. You can call in whenever you want. But thanks again for calling today. Really
Not me.
appreciate
Don't call me.
Take care, Drew.
Yeah, thanks for the great show, guys. I'll talk to you later.
All right. See you, man. Yeah. Gosh. And okay, I'm glad that that there's our art on the screen right now. For those of you who didn't get to see it earlier, we're kind of showing that. But I don't want to go into this because we have so many people who are calling. I just want to point out a quick thing that you said about talking about incels and stuff, because we haven't talked about this on Truth Wanted. And there's a good reason for that. It's because I don't want to start talking about this topic and bring more people to the situation just so that more of these people can be harassed. Yeah. I think you're right that, yes, the rhetoric they're saying can be absolutely mortifying. And you can absolutely look at that and say, wow, this is terrible. Therefore, these people must be terrible in all aspects. And there's just no redeeming values about them. And I think that's simply not true. I think that persecution that you're talking about is a narrative that runs strongly with people. And I think the incel movement in particular is where that narrative is thriving right now, because they keep constantly seeing streams of people insulting them, making fun of them, saying these things about them. Maybe some of that is true, but a lot of it is very hyperbolic and is very problematic for people who are obviously having some sort of frustration, obviously struggling with something. And instead of ridiculing people, maybe it is time that we need to further the conversation by being as empathetic as we can within reason, within our
my line is when you're actively harming somebody, when you're going to actively, mentally, physically, emotionally harm somebody, that's my line. That's where you and I stop having probably productive discourse, and I start explaining to you what's wrong with your behavior, because I'm no longer trying to understand you at that point in time, because I don't want to understand why you're hurting people. I want you to stop. I want you to understand why you need to stop it. So that's my line. But up until that point, when it's just people who are in bad patterns of thinking, particularly people who feel as though they have nowhere else to go, and the only group where they do feel accepted, they either have to adopt a poison perspective or be attacked internally and further ostracized when they're already feeling alone. Further vilifying those people will only further entrench them and reinforce the beliefs that people externally, because everything is about external enemies with them. So if all we're doing is roaming around proving them right.
Yes, that is an easy way to radicalize somebody.
Yeah,
To incentivize people to do all kinds of things. But again, I said I didn't want to go into it because holy cow, guys, we have so many calls on the line right now. I really want to make sure we try to get to everybody tonight. But I don't know. I really hope we can. We have so many people calling shit, and obviously you're a popular guest. Really happy about that. Let's go ahead and go to Craig in California. Craig wants to talk to us about...
Not Craig Reed. Oh, God damn.
Shannon! Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
I can hear you, sir. What's
I
up?
had to call. I saw the thumbnail, the infamous thumbnail, like last week, and I was like, "Oh my God, I got to be home tonight. I got to make sure I call." So here I am. All right.
Hey, Craig, how's it going? Craig and I were actually...
Found your calling. I think you found your calling, Shannon. Literally.
Talking
yes.
to you.
Tell him about that.
Talking to you, Craig.
Dan and I were in a heated debate. I think we're in a nice little chat on Tuesday
so
night.
heated.
It was really fun. I thought.
That was the chillest conversation I've had with a Christian on YouTube probably ever. Like, seriously, that was so nice. Yeah, that was just so fun. That was on the, was it Modern Debates channel? Craig, is that the name of it?
Yes, that's Shannon let me to him. James.
Yes.
James from Modern Day Debate.
Yes, so definitely check that out. So, Craig, what are you calling in about today?
Okay, here, I think I have a tweet. Your boy, Anthony Magnabosco, tweeted this out, and I picked it up. I'm going to read it to you. I think you will both very much agree with this. The guy's name is Dave McCraney.
Mm-hmm.
The key here is to avoid a debate and start a conversation. I figure this is perfect for Shannon. Debates have winners and losers, and no one wants to be a loser. Sensing identity threat, ding, 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 reasoning on both sides will be employed toward the goal of winning instead of determining the truth. I think that's totally on point, and I thought both of you would agree with that. So let's start with that.
Yeah, I agree. I can agree. It depends on your desire when you're entering into the dialogue. So everything is about what your goals are when you're going into the dialogue. I'm not suggesting that debates aren't a valuable way to, suss out information and assess ideas. That's just not my goal in this realm. So if my goal is to understand things better, understand myself better, self-scrutinize, and ask questions of others and kind of scrutinize their ideas as well, debate isn't the best format for me to do that. So yeah, I guess it depends on goals, but ultimately if your goal is to better understand somebody or build a relationship with somebody that allows you the opportunity to better understand or potentially have influence, then then I would agree with that.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I think I agree. I like to think of it as matching models. It's like, okay, let me hear what you're saying, and this is kind of the model I'm creating out of this, and here's me giving this back to you and saying, is this right? Is this what we're saying? And if we can agree that this is what we're talking about, maybe we can explore this, or we can explore that, or see where this model might work and where this model might not work, and trying to kind of figure out ideas from there.
That's a fascinating way to place it. I've always described that as, I've probably from the scholastic vernacular, I've always described that as dialectic mirroring, but matching models is a wonderful way of, I like that. I'm going to steal that.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm taking that.
So I would say with both of you why I thought the tweet was appropriate. I think this is true of you too, Dan. I'm almost positive it's true of Shannon, that you're not really trying to win a conversation with somebody, even a Christian like myself. From what I can gather, you're trying mostly to understand where they're coming from for your own edification, for your own, you're trying to, even when you had Cy Ten Bruggencate, you weren't trying to beat him, you were trying to understand him. And then the thing that I thought was really key in this is sensing identity threat, because I think that's where the rubber really meets the road because that's why we get into these, like Drew mentioned in his last video, or one of his last videos, about Christians lying about atheists or presuming to know why atheists are atheists. And part of the reason why they're doing that, I think, is he grew up in a community where he's probably the only atheist in his immediate family, his circle of friends, his extended family. So his his becoming an atheist is kind of an unspoken rebuke to them just by virtue of the decision he made. They perceive it as a threat. And that's what I think is the real, that's why we debate as opposed to talk, is that threat is involved. Like, you're a challenge to me. I don't consider either of you that, but I'm saying that's how most people perceive people on opposite sides of the issue. Would you say that's true?
Sometimes. I think that can be true sometimes, but it's very, very situational. A lot of times when people are going in, they are so concerned with making sure that what they see as a really shitty idea, a really bad idea, what they see as
You can curse on this show, Shannon. This is okay. It's okay. It's all good.
They attack the ideas very ardently without taking into consideration that the idea they're attacking exists within a person that they're engaging with. They're attacking the idea as though it is a person without regard for the fact that that idea exists inside a person that they're engaging. So I think that has more to do with it when it comes, like, it's not the person that they perceive as a threat. It's the idea they perceive as wrong or dangerous. And that idea is perceived as a threat. And that person represents that idea.
Right.
Yes.
So you're saying the person becomes the embodiment of the idea and they stop seeing the person, they just see the idea.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Or if it creates a dissonance with the person because they affiliated the person with a previous idea. Like that person was once like them. Right? They've now become othered. Not only have they become othered, but they've become othered by virtue of adopting a not just a different idea, but an idea that is in direct contradiction to the principles that bonded you together, that were
originally right, that you held near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, and they were
that makes sense.
Day-to-day interactions with one another without you even realizing it. It's tacit knowledge.
Yeah.
Right.
So, go on.
Yeah. Sorry, I talk a lot. So, when somebody's idea shifts, not only it's not even necessarily that it's perceived as a threat. It's now you have to reassess how you engage with that person on a day-to-day basis on any level where that idea sharing was a component of the interaction. So if the fact that shared idea is a component of any interaction that you had, either subconsciously or via action, and now that has been dramatically changed, shifted, or moved, or is in contradiction, you have to, somebody that you've known your entire life, you now have to try to figure out whether or not you can interact with them the same. So fear of losing that relationship as it existed prior factors in, I think, a lot more than the idea itself. People value relationships more than they value ideas. So if your relationship with somebody has shifted so dramatically because of an idea, and you feel as though you can in some way persuade them to change that idea so that you can get them back, you will try to do that first, because that's, that might seem like the easier road. And that way you get back the person that you already had, instead of having to try to figure out how to be with a new person and what that means for the relationship. I think that factors in a lot more than just the idea being a threat when it comes to individual relationships anyway, like as you referenced Drew.
Yeah. I would add on to that and say something that, speaking from a personal note, when I started doing this show, when I started getting more involved, one of the reasons why I did was because my personal switch from my religious life was a switch in what I considered a legitimate authority in a certain way. In my sense, it was Christianity. Christianity was a legitimate authority in my life. It dictated my behavior. It dictated my relationships. It dictated the way that I went about doing things. And when I came to the conclusion that this authority was not legitimate, right, and under my conclusions, that affected my, one, like Shannon said, relationships with other people, which was very dramatic and caused a lot of shifts in that realm. But it also made me realize how much authority it had over my life and how much I see the authority in other people's lives, which that kind of spurns a sort of activism in me in some sense of why I like to speak out about those issues. But in regards to why I like to have conversations with people, I think realizing that and having that personal revelation meant that I'd like to give a similar kind of insight, and not necessarily so that people can dismantle the authorities in their life or dismantle what they consider legitimate in their life, but to at least give people a certain perspective of, hey, I didn't realize that, atheists were this kind of minority in this country and they had a lot of these issues and things. I would say here's a buzzword phrase I'm going to use, like Christian privilege. I'm going to put that out there. Christian privilege made me realize that there were this kind of other conversations going on, and I would have wanted to know.
I'll take it. Is it there?
I would have wanted to know that, Craig, if I was a Christian. I really would have, but I didn't because I didn't have the personal experience to.
Right. Okay. So you're saying, and I got this when I interviewed you.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I labeled you as a young, hungry atheist. There's slightly more evangelical fervor.
Call me an atheist. Call me whatever you want. I want to have these conversations regardless of what label I choose. If I became a Christian tomorrow, Craig, I would keep the friends that I have now. I would keep talking about the same things that bother me because, that's part of who I am.
Right. But you have somewhat of a... there are certain things, certain pieces of information that you think is valuable to convey to people regardless, because you think that will help open their mind to perhaps your way of thinking, but it's in you. That's part of what you're about. Is that
as a human being, not as an atheist, as a human being. Yeah, exactly. I think self-examination is important. I think that's a value I'm willing to convey to people if we're going to go that route and say, I'm out there trying to convey information, because I don't want Truth Wanted to be a show where I tell people what I think about things all the time. I want to hear what other people say. But yeah, I'm a person and I exist and I have thoughts and feelings and experiences, and I want to be able to share some of those too. So yeah, I think I agree with that.
Well, Truth Wanted is truthfully more open-ended than most of your atheist call-in shows, and I mean that as a compliment. It's a lot more exploratory and conversational than... I don't think I've ever seen counter-apologetics as classically understood, where someone calls up and you're aware that the Bible says this and this. I don't think I've ever seen your show do that.
Not yet.
It has, and I missed it.
Not yet.
Not yet.
It probably will happen. It's not that I don't have...
Craig, give me apologetics. Let's get them.
No, I like reading on the biblical scholarship and stuff. I'm actually very interested in that. I just... that's a rabbit hole. If you debate one person, then more people will want to debate with you, and then it becomes a whole thing.
Oh, that's a
here's the
point.
thing.
Yeah.
Here's also another thing, Craig. I'm not sure if there's anything that I could tell you that would convince you to change your mind about what you believe. I'm not sure that there is, but I may be able to tell you something that could inspire an action in you that could maybe let you see things a little bit differently. So why not do that? Even as an atheist, right? Realistically speaking, the whole world isn't going to become atheist tomorrow. It's not even going to become atheist in my lifetime. Why even bother with that? I'd rather make gradual changes to improve people's lives, holistically, while they're here now, even if it means that they're going to be a Christian for the rest of their life. That's fine. If it comes down to it, and they're not willing to give up that part of themselves, even if I don't think it's true, if I can at least help them improve their lives while they're here, I think that's what's best for people.
Well, that's actually really cool, but that's actually... I won't go so far as to say that's wise, because that's giving you too much credit.
Well, I'm not saying deny truth and do whatever you want. Well, don't get me twisted here. What I am saying is I'm being realistic about what I'm having conversations with people.
It's like what we were talking about on Tuesday night. If you're going to be let's say Christian and atheists are working a job together, or married, or my wife has totally different political opinions than me. I don't spend any time trying to convince her of anything about her opinions. We sort of carved out a space where we can freely discuss politics without, without debating, without trying to, are you aware that, you know what I'm saying? And that's kind of what I hear you said, I think. I'll ask one more question, then I'll leave you guys. So in this tweet, the context of this tweet is trying to change people's minds. I think that's the lecture the guy gave. Have you heard of this guy, David McCraney?
Yeah, I've heard the name before. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you, and you kind of answered it, Dan. And Shannon, I don't think you're in the business of changing minds. I would never say that that's what you're about. Is that how you see it? I don't see you as someone who's actively trying to change people's minds so much as engage and learn, maybe to eventually change minds, like Dan said. But I want to hear from both of you. How much are you in the business of changing minds? Because I asked a girl on Twitter once, she said deconversion, period. I said, why are you talking to people at all? Deconversion, that's it. I was like, wow, that's weird. Go ahead.
I wouldn't simplify it by saying my goals are to change anybody's mind. I think that's too simplistic a way of looking at it. My goal is to be an advocate for atheists and try my damnedest to be a good representation of the community whenever I can. Main goals for me are to attack things that are harmful, and I focus on that by doing the more scripted videos in conversations and dialogues, which is I think what more you're referring to. My main goal is to scrutinize my own ideas so that I can make sure that I am holding good ones, and also to encourage the other people that I am having dialogues with to analyze and scrutinize their own along with me, and allow me to scrutinize theirs as I would allow them to scrutinize mine, and encourage that process. Now, by virtue of encouraging that process, I think that naturally leads people towards changing their minds in a lot of situations and scenarios. I want to help people figure out why they believe the things they do, figure out if they arrive there for good reasons, and if they hold beliefs that are true, and determine how they got there. So I guess that would be kind of in the realm of being in the business of changing people's minds, or at least opening them up to the possibility that their mind potentially should be changed. But I don't want to brainwash anybody or force anybody or coerce anybody into believing something different.
I would say maybe you're giving people the option. Option they've never considered before.
Okay.
Yeah, the tools to self-analyze in a comfortable space, and also the tools to better understand somebody who believes something that is dramatically different than you, and without fear of attack. I give great answers, Dan. Craig. I give good answers.
You give good answers. That's a good answer, Dan. I say sign her up. You said like godless things. Forget that. Just keep it Shannon week to week. I'll go back. It'll be fun. That's exactly what you said. I also hear like keeping people non-defensive so the conversation is organic and real. I heard that somewhere in there. I don't know if you exactly said that.
I implied it in a lot of different areas, but that's the same.
Yeah. I mean, people are more convinced. I'll just add this. I think people are more convinced when you add that human element to it, where you say, look, this is where I'm at. This is my story. This is how I came to this conclusion. And not just saying, here's the evidence. Here's my case. Go figure it out for yourselves. That's not as evidence. Deal with it. Yeah, it's not as appealing to people, for better or worse. Even if that was the quote unquote better way for people to figure out their beliefs, it's just not realistic for most people. It's just not realistically how that happens oftentimes. Oftentimes you have to go through this human body to figure things out, and sometimes we're emotional and angry and sad and all kinds of things that affect our processes of reasoning.
Right, and it's a whole process, and it's right, exactly. I agree.
Mm-hmm. Well, Craig, I think that's about all the time we have for this call, but I do appreciate you calling, and if you're really going to call again, you should call again, Craig. I mean, it's always fun talking to you,
Yeah. Well, I would have called when Sirius was here. I didn't realize Sirius was on until after the show was over. I'll definitely call. I'll call a lot.
All right.
Craig means that too.
I didn't mean that as a threat. And I meant that as like, I'll call out. It'll be fun. Not like, I'll call out. Watch back, Dan. Thank you, guys.
All right, we'll see you later, Craig.
I was like talking to Craig.
Yeah, he's a fun guy. So yeah, there's proof, guys. You can have good, friendly conversations with a Christian and not even talk about religion. Really, we didn't even go into it, but
I love Craig.
yeah, it happens. There can be good movement there, good relations there. That can affect a lot of things. A lot of people can be moved by that, and it doesn't have to be at your throat conversations every single time. You know, it's really fun. It's really fun. Man, we got some more calls, Shannon. We got to get through these calls.
I want to talk to you. Yeah.
So many people who want to talk to you. I want to go, let's see. Let's go with Gannon. Gannon in California. What is up, Gannon?
Oh, hey, I got through. Awesome. Hey, guys.
Hey, how's it going, dude?
Good.
All right, Gannon.
Hey, Shannon.
I have a little description here of your call, and it says that, oh boy, here goes. You want our take on Jordan Peterson.
Oh, goodness.
That's yes. So I've been listening to a lot of Jordan Peterson like over the last, I don't know, year or so. Shannon, admittedly, I'm a fan of yours, but I've only seen a couple chats, one with Saiten Bruggenkate and the other with Adam Friended. And
greatness. Okay.
Yeah. And that was the one I actually wanted to address because he's sort of, he's a huge Jordan Peterson pusher. So
no.
So, I mean, I've kind of heard you already describe what you think before about it, I think, but I just wanted to see if you had any maybe updated thoughts on it. If you, I don't know, have any opinion on his definition of God, which is this giant, 2-hour high resolution description, which is entirely metaphorical and, psychology based. So, and since you have a degree in psychology, I thought that would be interesting to hear. So.
I'm not sure if I've ever heard him succinctly give a description of his conceptualization of God, but the gist of it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because I very well could be wrong. I've read 12 Rules, but I don't watch a lot of his stuff. And I read it relatively. I didn't read it. I listened to it as I was driving to Edmonton. So, to be fair, so I was kind of tuned in and out for some of it. But his definition of God seems to be such that he defines God as a set of principles that should be aspired to, that he deems to be principles that are beneficial for society. And he chooses to live his life as though the God that represents that set of principles, those principles that we would have defined or would define as ultimately morally good, we should live our lives in accordance to that God existing. And he is a proponent for Christianity because he believes Christianity is the best instantiation of those principles that's malleable enough that people could live their lives in accordance to those principles and kind of cast off the components of the religion that directly contradict those principles in certain aspects, because he also sees Jesus as the ultimate instantiation of the archetype of the hero in that you see manifesting itself over and over and over again through literature, but which is a good archetype to wish to adhere to or to aspire towards, but has the added bonus of also being a physical representation and manifestation of that ultimate metaphysical, metaphorical God that represents all of these admirable moral qualities. Does that sound as though I'm succinctly?
That's pretty. That's almost spot on. The only things I would add are just it's the I'm sort of reading description of his. So he had a discussion with Sam Harris in Vancouver.
I watched that.
I'm kind of reading the transcript from what his description of it was. And one of the things that I think is, it's like he's defining it as God as a concept, therefore God exists kind of thing. So it's not that it's supernatural. It's not that it's a being as such. It's that it's an idea and it's an ethos and it's, God is...
a conceptualization is kind of how I described it.
I specifically remember him being in an interview and somebody asking him if he thought there was a historical person of Jesus like rising from the dead, and he just like didn't really give a very clear answer on that. So I would say like his position as Christian or non-Christian is like debatable. You know, I mean, maybe like we're kind of talking about a metaphysical deistic conception of God, but like I don't know any mainstream Christianity. Really
I don't even think that he has a deistic conceptualization of God.
Yeah.
I think that his conceptualization of God is a set of supreme concepts that we should all attempt to adhere to.
But see, isn't this interesting? Because we can talk about these interpretations we might have about these beliefs because they're just
he's
not
not
clear. They're just not super clear. Here's one thing I'll say about Jordan Peterson. I don't think I've talked about him on Truth. Well, I'm not sure if I've talked about it. I think we talked about it a little bit before, but I can't say anything about what he says about psychology and stuff. That's not my field. I do know that he has talked about postmodernism. That's a little bit more in my realm of, I'm not going to say expertise, I'm going to say realm of knowledge, okay? And he has these kinds of dangerous conflation of different kinds of ideas, and probably with psychology as well, as Shannon could attest to. But I know that these kinds of conflations of like Marxism and postmodernism and all these kinds of movements and stuff are basically forming, I mean, he talks about narratives, but really by doing what he's doing, he's creating a new narrative about what these ideas are and what they're supposed to represent and what they mean. Instead of people looking at the original source material of a lot of these texts, they're relying on Jordan Peterson to kind of give them the cut. So like most people don't know what postmodernism is or what it's about when you talk about them. They really don't know. And here is somebody who is giving them information about what they think it is and what it means politically for them. And that's giving people these ideas that not only are not correct, but can incentivize people to do the wrong thing and to protest and to make these big stinks about things that aren't either not happening or are happening, but like way out of proportion that isn't happening the way that they say that they're happening. And it can be dangerous. I think some of the rhetoric he has said is definitely dangerous. I'm not saying that everything he's ever said is wrong or doesn't need to be said either, but I am saying that whenever you talk about something that you're not an expert in and you don't have everything you need to know, you can influence people to do stuff. And I think we've already seen that with some of his followers. If you look at people who used to be quote unquote followers of Jordan Peterson speak out about the time that they talked about when they were talking to other people, they sound like, and they have self-described themselves as leaving a cult, a kind of cult of personality. I don't know if that's the intention. I highly doubt that it is, but people are drawn to these ideas, and it's causing quite a stir, and it worries me. It really does worry me.
So I'm curious now that you said that, because the description of postmodernism that he's given is, and I'm nowhere near, I'm a dummy. I mean, I don't know much about this stuff at all, but the description I've heard him give time and time again is basically that there's an infinite number of facts and that there's an infinite number of interpretations of those facts, and that's postmodernism. There's no hierarchy of value for postmodernism. So
Dan's about to die.
So like, listen, I'm not about to give a lecture on postmodernism on here, okay? Here's what I will say. Postmodernism means different things to different postmodern authors. Authors that have been described as postmodern never called themselves postmodern, and have been interpreted as postmodern, even though they're not postmodern. Some modernists have been called postmodern, like all kinds of things. Obviously, we talked about like, the thing I noticed the most from Peterson is, like I was saying before, is calling these people Marxists and saying that these people are trying to control speech. I mean, the whole like...
He does say it as a single string, like postmodern neo-Marxist.
Yeah, postmodern neo-Marxist. Like that's not a thing. That's not a thing. He is literally, that's an idea created out of the air. And when he's talking about narratives, when he's talking about these structures, like he is creating a new narrative by talking about these ideas in this way. He is engaging in postmodern rhetoric in some ways. He is giving new interpretations to ideas, which, again, that's not all of what postmodernism is, but interpretation and examination of structure and the breakdown of structure and post-structuralism it can be a part of some postmodernism. So it's mind-numbing. It's mind-blowing, I should say. Mind-blowing how you can take these ideas and just completely say the opposite of what they are, and sometimes and convince people that this is what they are, because the average lay person, like I said, doesn't know a lot of this stuff. And I'm not saying that's their fault. There's very complex ideas that people have been writing books about for years and years. And when somebody comes in and says, here, I'm the expert, let me tell you what you need to think about this and what's going on in this country and how these people in these elitist positions are warping you and doing these things, then suddenly you're radicalizing people. You're starting a movement of things. And that's why we're saying what we're seeing right now. We're seeing people doing these things, doing these protests, making these, awful comments online, and who knows how long it's going to continue,
He does that with religion a lot. Like he's essentially he's taken his concepts of what a moral system should be, the name God, and then grafted it onto the Bible because he sees that Christianity as having enough wiggle room and it's similar enough that he could graft it nicely onto that and convince people that it's a new version of that's always been there, and that's the way that they should lead and conduct their lives, and that every other aspect of it, of Christianity, like in the Bible itself, that is contradictory to that is just because it's not being it should be interpreted as literature, which is that's his innovation, I think, as an incidental or accidental apologist. Is he sees the Bible as a valuable piece of literature that you can graft a moral system upon, and he sees society as benefiting from instantiating that moral system. So if you interpret the Bible as literature, attribute the moral characteristics that he sees as valuable to the God that is emergent from that literature, and then convince people or live your life, in his instance, as though it exists and is true, then religion is a way of policing people into adhering to beneficial moral structures, and policing people into adhering to what he sees as beneficial moral structures is better for society. And that's essentially the crux of his argument, is that even though it's not true, these are good morals. We can graft them onto this, and this helps control people's behavior.
Yeah.
Well, I think by true, he actually means it evolutionarily speaking. So these ideas have survived for.
Why is the Bible needed unless it's needed because it's an agent of control?
Well, it's just an old set of stories that have this timeless nature, in the sense
there are
that
millions and millions and millions of old sets of stories.
Yeah, here's what I'll say. I think you're right about this archetype idea. I think it's this conflation of what we can observe from archetypes and like what we can sometimes say is true, and like it's a difference between should and what is, I think, is what it is. Maybe there is some truth in some of this archetypes that he's talking about in what we see about the world, but that doesn't mean that that's necessarily what needs to happen, or that it's a society that we want to continue to live in. I mean, I'm talking specifically, the examples I'm thinking of are the gender roles that are being supported. I know that at least my understanding of Peterson, and I could be wrong, but I believe he does have specific ideas about men and women and how these gender roles should happen in society. I'm saying this word should because I think he does have an opinion on this should. And
it's not like a top-down assertion, though. It's like the manifestation of the masculine and feminine, as far as feminine being nature and masculine being father culture, as he says. So it's not like these are the instantiations of things that like men and women have to do, and that there's only two genders, etc.
Maybe you say that, Gannon, but like a lot of these people who follow Jordan Peterson, I think they do say that. I think they do say that they're complaining about these ideas not being represented wholly enough, and that these ideas are being mixed up, and that they're not as clearly demarcated as they used to be. Maybe Peterson himself isn't saying it, but I've seen people who do think that do kind of follow these ideas.
Yeah, but the followers I'm not talking about. I'm talking about Jordan Peterson, because Jordan Peterson's like view of this high resolution view, I think, is.
How do you know that that's his view? Because if his words are ambiguous enough that they can be.
I mean.
If somebody else read that transcript, could they potentially and very easily have a different interpretation because his words are ambiguous enough that they can be imbued with whatever intention you desire?
Kind of, yeah. It's like art.
Then what is the value of them? Yeah. And as what is the value of them when navigating reality if they can be imbued with your existing perspective and don't enlighten you?
He puts it in a more clear way than a much clearer way than the words of the source that he's reading from. So he reads the story of Genesis. He reads the story of Cain and Abel, which is like a paragraph long, and he extracts from it this 3-hour long lecture about it, and he puts it in plain English. And I mean, to the extent that I understand it, it makes a lot of sense, and it doesn't like radicalize me to do anything harmful to people. I guess it might for some.
So you have respect for his interpretation of the text, because it's
well, yeah. I mean, it's like this. Here's the story, and each time it says God, it's like is that God, or is it his 2-hour long description of God? And then if you like unpack the entire thing, then it becomes like this hugely long, like if you wrote it all down, it'd be a novel. It'd be huge, and it would all be an extraction from this one paragraph story. Anyway, the main thing I wanted to get across was just like, because he's a clinical psychologist and he has like science-based evidence for a lot of his positions, I'm wondering, like, is that something you agree with in that sense? I mean, you might not call it God. It's not the supernatural being kind of God. And in that sense, he's kind of been put on the spot time and time again with people. And it seems to me like each time he's trying to say that he's an atheist like us, but he doesn't want to come out and say that, because that would do a lot of harm to the people that, as a clinical psychologist, he's talked through that are religious in the supernatural sense.
Why would existing as an atheist be harmful to a religious person?
If they're dangerous people, that they look up to Jordan Peterson because he's a clinical psychologist and he's helped them in their lives, and they find out that he's actually...
And he can't do that as an atheist?
Yeah, like that might actually cause some harm to people, and that's a reason.
Being an atheist causes harm to people?
No. It's that if he came out and said, I don't believe in God the same way that Ken Ham believes in God. If he said those literal words, that could cause some people to flip out. And
okay.
I think that's a good reason to not come out and say that.
So he needs to instantiate a lie in order to maintain a perception about himself?
I don't know if lie is the right word, though, for the reason I just gave. Because it's like, it's a useful fiction, maybe. Like, as... I don't know.
That's a reconstruction of the English language in order to allow for the fact that is a lie.
It's lying by withholding information, right?
No, it's lying by flat out saying he's obfuscating the information because he doesn't want to get pegged down, and it's not necessarily because it's harmful. It's because that allows people to create reinterpretations and perceive him as religious when they are religious and trust him, and then it allows people like us. Not like me, but people who are like me, who are atheists, to look at him and say, oh, also, he's like me. That makes him like everybody. So like I said before, everybody who wants to can imbue their existing perspective. And thus, it's not valuable as anything other than artistic interpretation. Like you brought up how he interprets Genesis. And he interprets Genesis as though his definition of God is the definition that is there. That's great. If he was the one who wrote Genesis, that would be incredibly valuable. However, what he's saying is this was the intention of the authors who wrote the text. If you speak to somebody who studied Sumerian and Hebrew and knows the history of those books, they will tell you a different story. So that's great that his interpretation fits there. Lots of others fit there too. Ken Ham's fits there as well. That doesn't make it valuable. The reason that it's valuable to people is because they're able to relate to it and imbue upon it. And one of the reasons is because he allows that ambiguity. So that's why I don't see anything that he says necessarily valuable, and some of it is dangerous because people argue for him as though he is their leader and cannot be questioned. And if you can't scrutinize people's ideas without fear of attack, there's a problem, and I think it needs to be assessed.
There it is, Shannon.
Okay.
Any more comments? We do have a few more callers we gotta get to on the line here. I think that's a good way to kind of sum it up.
I feel like this went in the same direction that it did with Adam when you talked to him. It's like, yeah, I mean, the way that you interpret it, the way he says things is like it has this duality nature to it. It's like if you're an atheist, you hear what he's saying. If you're a theist, you hear what he's saying, and it's like in both aspects. If he gets it across to you correctly, then
that's a problem.
If it inspires you to do good in the world,
I see that as a problem.
If it inspires you to do good in the world, then that's actually better.
It's not always going to inspire good in the world, though, because if you have two different interpretations of something, then you're always. It's the same. Like this is what Christians.
It's never going to be science. This is never going to be science.
This is what religion has done for centuries, right? This is what religious people have done for centuries. They've taken their texts, they reinterpreted them from. How many times, Gannon, have you heard now in Christianity in 2019 that, oh, hey, you could actually be gay now? Like, oh, this was something in the New Testament, and they weren't talking about our modern conceptions of homosexuality. Like whether or not that's actually
they had to do something to keep surviving.
But Gannon,
transform the text.
Here's my thing, right? Whether or not that's actually true and that interpretation of the text is correct, it's still changing the narrative. It's still doing it for political convenience. And I think that's what we're seeing here. I think that there is a construction of a narrative that aligns with people's politics to keep them going, to keep them motivated to do what they do because it fits what they're already doing in the first place, what they already believed in the first place. I really think that's what's going on.
I think that's fair. There's one more thing. So I was at.
Hurry up, because we got a couple more callers here. We got to get to it. But
right on. So I was at a atheist convention thing, and Matt Dillahunty was up there with Aaron Ra and I forgot the other guy's name and David Silverman. And I asked the question, like if you could rewrite the Bible so that it was like more like morally correct in an objective sense, because Matt believes in objective morality, and if it could be as unambiguous as possible, would it look more like a science book or more like a storybook? And he said it would be a mix of both. And what I wanted to follow up with that and didn't really get a chance was, well, if it could be both and there would be some story elements to it, then who's to say that the stories you tell wouldn't be interpreted down the line as something good or bad later, and that would require some sort of later interpretation to follow up on it?
It's almost like we shouldn't have a book. It's almost like we shouldn't just have one book and that it's an ongoing story and we're continuing to discover. I'm back on Jordan Peterson for a second. Jordan Peterson, this is one of the reasons that he frustrates me, because Jordan Peterson has eventually reinstantiated or reinvented Christianity in a way that allows it to adopt atheists as converts while still retaining their identities somewhat as atheists. That is what his legacy is. And you're one of them. Which is why we're having this conversation where you, as an atheist, are defending the existence of efficacy of reasonability of and necessity for a religious text as though it maintains some value that
I just don't
supersedes the value of other. Well, exactly. No, I agree. I think that we should cast off doctrines. Absolutely. There's no answers to every question in a book, and existing as though there are is a mistake. It's an ongoing conversation, and there's millions and millions of books being written, and maybe the one that has the answer or the millions that do have the answer haven't been written yet, and likely they haven't. So if we choose to exist,
the Bible though.
He uses other books to interpret it and then holds it up as the ultimate book.
Yep, the authority that we should take
that represents the best instantiation of them all, because it allows you to have the emergent property of a God that he can imbue with those moral systems. And I think that's dangerous.
All right.
Gannon.
I tried. I tried.
Thank you. No, seriously.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for calling.
Fun.
This was
a good conversation.
That was a hot take. That was some hot takes going on right there. I enjoyed it. Please call again sometime.
It was fun, Gannon.
All right.
I respect your conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully we can have like a real one, like a full one.
We'll make it happen.
Yeah, find me on Twitter, guy.
All right. Woo! It's hot in here. It's a little hot in here. A lot of hot takes being thrown around. No, don't be sorry. This is great. Man. Wow. Whew. We still have 3 more callers on the line, Shannon.
Oh my gracious.
How much time do you have today?
I can go for another, I don't know, like 20 minutes.
Okay,
40 minutes?
let's try to wrap these up as fast as we can. Sorry, callers, I know you guys have been waiting. We've just been having some really interesting conversations, so I'm just going to go spitfire here, going to our next caller. This is Matt in Virginia. I have this description here. This is fascinating. It says epistemology, knowledge, get to your problem, atheist hip-hop. Matt, please explain to me what this means.
Yeah. So, first of all, hi guys. Dan, love the show. I can't wait for you guys to get merch. I need a Truth Wanted mug.
Yo.
But anyways, I'll try to be quick.
Keep making emails about that so that people at the ACA know that we need to make some of that merch. Okay.
I need a tank top,
Okay.
please.
Yeah.
Okay. And Shannon, I'll be checking out some of your YouTube videos. But
Thanks.
so anyways, a lot of people describe epistemology as sort of the study of knowledge, but I would more phrase it as the study of the development and justification of beliefs. And so, are either of you familiar with the Gettier problem?
I am familiar with the Gettier problem. Am I ready to talk about it at 8:39 at night on a Friday with Shannon?
Right.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Here's the thing. I if you're looking for what is my exact philosophical take on the Gettier problem, I don't know if I'm as cognizant right now to be able to do that. But
Okay. Well,
I
maybe
don't even know what it
can
is.
give a brief description of it.
Sure.
Yeah, please do. I have no idea what we're talking about.
Okay, so for quite a while, it was widely accepted in epistemology that knowledge is justified true belief, right? But this guy Gettier wrote a 3-page paper, and it kind of just threw this massive wrench into that whole scheme, and it led to this cascade of reinventing new conceptions of knowledge. But so anyways, I personally kind of think traditional definitions of knowledge are kind of incoherent because of, since I've looked at this, I think Matt Dillahunty, he's got a better definition of like knowledge. Like, I know this just really means I really believe this and think I have a strong justification for it.
yeah.
But,
Okay.
so anyways,
right. So
yeah, what do you guys think?
okay, so I'll just briefly reiterate on what this specific problem is. It's talking about justified true beliefs and how we understand that. And the Gettier problem gives it to some specific examples about someone who was right about something and but may not have had actual justification for being right about something, but just happened to be right about something, and saying that he wasn't actually justified in his beliefs and stuff like that. I like the deflationary idea of knowledge, which is just like, this snow is white because it's white. You know what I mean? Like, not one, because it kind of derails the conversation a little bit, and I just think it's funny, but also because, I've tried looking into like the hard stuff on epistemology and seeing like, okay, what is our best idea of what we can understand in truth? How do we know truth things? And what is our best definition of truth that we can use? And to be honest, I don't have a great answer. Smarter people than me have been trying to figure this out for literally centuries. And it's good. It's good to think about this. It really is good to examine what we mean by true, examine what we mean by knowledge, examine these words to an absolute T and figure out, okay, like, what do I mean when I say that I think I'm justified in being an atheist, for example, or an agnostic atheist specifically, right? Honestly, it involves a lot longer of an analysis that I'm willing to give here on a live show. Maybe one day on my personal channel, I'd like to talk about it a bit more. I think Shannon had to tend to her kids right now, which is why it's just me talking. But, I'll say this much. I think it's... I still like just by nomenclature, I guess, talking about beliefs in the sense of, I like when people say when they mean they believe things that they are confident in their beliefs. They have a confidence scale, for example.
Right.
I agree with that. I think pragmatically that seems to be a really good way for me to talk about how people believe. Like, are you 100% confident that there is no God, for example? I would say no. Are you like 50% confident? I mean, like you can go on this scale, and even if it's not the most accurate measurement, because it is kind of subjective to a degree. I mean, for the layperson's sake, I think like asking people what they mean by knowledge based on confidence, like how confident they are that they believe something is true, seems to me like, for pragmatic purposes, a good way of talking about, even with the problems that still apply to that. Hopefully that answers your question a little bit, Matt.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a much better, more apt description of knowledge. Is when people commonly use it, they're more saying, I have a high level of confidence in this.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, I'll try to get to the atheist hip-hop thing.
Yeah.
So we don't take up too much time.
Yeah, real quick, I am curious about that.
Okay, yeah. So a lot of people probably who listen to hip-hop aren't kind of cognizant that there is a atheist community that's developed within the rap game. And there's one guy in particular, Graydon Square,
Mm-hmm.
who when I was first deconverted, I went through this sort of nihilism, and this was at about the age of 12. So I went to the Bible and saw all these horrific things in there, and then that kind of made me go towards the atheist route, and that kind of made me just feel like, there was no reason to anything, and there was no meaning or whatever. But I found, probably about 3 years after that, I found the atheist experience, and that really helped me delve more into philosophy and kind of rebuild a worldview. But also the atheist hip-hop, it really helped me as well. Yeah, so...
Just wanted to comment on.
Have you heard any atheist hip-hop?
I've heard that name before. I have a friend of mine who is kind of into it. I think the first atheist hip hop person I ever listened to was Hobson, which is kind of funny because he did Christian rap for a bit and then became he was an atheist and then he became a Christian and then he became an atheist again, I think, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, his development has been really interesting.
Yeah, that's a whole new scene, man. I'm not in that scene. I'll be honest with you. I think it's cool that people can make music about that stuff. It's finding topics to do music about like that has got to be really difficult. It's got to be really narrowing. Props to you if you can make a career out of talking about issues in your music like that, and getting people thinking. I think it's really cool. Sorry, I can't give you much more of an opinion on that. I'm not sure if Shannon can either.
No, I think it's cool. Now I kind of want to go find it now and listen to it.
It's out there.
Yeah,
it's definitely out there.
Listen to Graydon Square. A lot of his stuff, some of his stuff is controversial. He was primarily atheistic in all of his raps in the beginning. Then he's developed more political things that do sort of align with my views. A little kind of progressive, but kind of more anti-establishment. But also on his latest thing called Compton Scattering, which, by the way, this guy studies physics.
Yes. That's what I want out of my rappers. We need more physicist rappers. That's the line I'm pushing.
He talks about a lot of science. One of his lines is, education is my rhyming style. And he does it in a way where it doesn't sound like Schoolhouse Rock or something, Like, he actually does it good.
Well, hey, man. Don't knock on the Schoolhouse Rock. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, it's good, but it's a little corny, And you can't be all corny in hip hop, man.
Okay, you can't tell me that there is no atheist hip hop out there that isn't a little corny. You can't tell me that that's not true.
I bet there is.
No, yeah, but that's exactly what I'm saying. He can do it where it's something you can vibe to, and feel it.
Well, that's really awesome. Matt, thanks for sharing that with us. That was really cool. And hopefully I answered your question the first time. And I guess the takeaway from this is listen to more atheist hip hop, guys. It's out there.
That's right, everyone.
Check it out.
Absolutely.
All
Absolutely.
Right. Take care, Matt.
First time caller to ACHO, and I've been listening to their shows for over a decade now.
Yes.
Truth One is my favorite
And you
ATA show.
Woo! We got another one, Mark.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dan, I might be in like your top 10 fans. You're an inspiration, dude. Shannon, you sound fantastic. First time hearing of you. So take it easy, guys.
I love it. Thank you, Matt. Really appreciate it. That is great. Good to hear. We have a fan base, guys. It's out there. Woohoo! I love it. You guys are great. Shannon, we still got 2 more callers. Are you ready to tackle 2 more?
Yeah, sorry, I had to.
No, you're all good.
Sorry.
You are all good. Let's just keep the train going. This is Antonio from Illinois. Antonio wants to know what atheists believe is the basis for morality, and Antonio is calling in as a theist. Antonio, what's up?
How's it going, man? I'm wondering if this topic is way too broad with the time we got left, and
probably.
I don't want to like push it like too deep.
I'm so sorry that we had to get you at the very end of the show, but I mean, we can go as deep as we can for the time's sake, and be sure to call again next week too if you feel like we didn't cover it enough.
Yeah, you mean we can't cover the entire basis of morality in the next 10 to 15 minutes?
If anybody can do it, Shannon, it's you and me. Let's do it. Come on. Let's hear it, Antonio. Tell me what you want to say.
Yeah, and by the way, I got to give a quick shout out to Shannon. She might not remember me too much, but I actually had a conversation with her some months back.
We had an abortion conversation together, Antonio.
Gosh, if I had a nickel.
Absolutely. Hi.
Oh, that's awesome.
Of course I remember you. I was actually wondering if it was you. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to talk to you again. You were always lovely to talk to. Nice to see you again.
All right. Yeah, it's good to talk to you too. So I'll try to keep this short as possible. So firstly, I'll just give my perspective, and then I want to hear you guys' perspective. So in Christianity, when we talk about like what grounds truth, we just look at Jesus by saying, by referencing John 14:6, which says, he is the way, the truth, and the life. That's what he claims. And when we look at things like love, for example, 1 John 4:8 says that God is love. And when we look at things like wisdom and knowledge, we look at Colossians 2:2-3, which says all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge are hidden in Christ. And when we look for why we should reason, we look at Isaiah 1:18 that says, come, let us reason together, said the Lord. So I'm looking at a couple of things. So we see reason, we see knowledge and wisdom. We can ground all these things in God, this the Christian worldview. So in atheism, how would such things like this be grounded?
How our wisdom... So go ahead, Dan.
I think, yeah. So it's a common question that comes up, and I think it's an interesting one to talk about. It was actually one of the big questions I had on my mind for a long time when I was really kind of considering these ideas very deeply. I didn't understand how an atheist could, like, quote unquote, base his morality on anything, because I had always come with the understanding of, oh, well, you have to have some sort of ethical system to base things on it. And when I was a Christian, mine was Christianity, at least my interpretation of Christianity. So I would say, atheists do it in different ways. Not all atheists are going to do it the same way. For myself, I am inspired by the ideas of secular humanism, of several variations, specifically the most recent variation of the Humanist Manifesto, outlines some principles that I think that I would agree with, and I think that would be best if most people followed these principles. And that's kind of how I am understanding how morality would work, is if everybody kind of followed these principles, or if most people kind of follow these principles, would we live in a quote unquote better world? And I know, and I am skipping over lots and lots of philosophical details we could really sink our teeth into. But essentially there's no real one way to answer this, and it's going to be based on, depending on who you talk to. There's an argument that could be made that says that our morality does have some basis in evolution, and that evolution can sometimes support altruistic actions, and sometimes it doesn't support altruistic actions, which is why we see the conflicts that we do in modern society. And that's kind of naturalist understanding of morality, I think, definitely has a place in the conversation as well. I think as people, we kind of decide as a society of what's best, and we kind of just go from there, for better or worse. so there's obviously going to be conflicts, and I think there's going to continue to be conflicts until, we're all dead because of those conflicts or something else. Maybe we'll all reach utopia, who knows? But I definitely don't have this idea, and we kind of talked about this earlier, of this one idea to rule them all that's going to always trump all ideas in all situations. I'm not sure if that's true. I'm a fan of the idea of a morality that is changing over time, that is continuing to develop. If I'm the person that's saying, look, this is my ideas and we need to stick with these ideas for now, for all time, that's going to cause some problems later on when we discover new things about ourselves, whether it be through science or through social changes and technological changes. I think we need to be savvy and adapt to those changes when we can. Shannon, did you have anything you want to say on this?
Yeah, I could say a couple of things. I think you summarized that really well. But what I could do, I think, that which might be valuable, is go through some of the process that I went through during deconversion, because morality was actually the most contentious issue for me. And it was because I came to the realization that my perceptions of morality differed, and I had to either augment them in order to match the Bible or find ways to reconcile them with the Bible. And that brought me to this conclusion that I'm still working on, which is one of the reasons why the morality conversation is so interesting to me. So I'm going to preface this by saying I don't have the answer to that question, but it's one of the questions that I'm the most interested in answering. So what I came to is that I was subjectively interpreting a book based on ideas that I developed internally. The book itself was written by people who were also putting down their own internal ideas. And there was an inconsistency between the two. Because I had attributed that book to God, I was working on reconciling those inconsistencies, and I found that it was incompatible. Even if I hadn't found that it was incompatible, I came to the realization that I was the one doing the reconciliations. That was me. I was doing the reconciliations. I was the one making the assessments. If I was the one making the assessments, then that means that I must have some sort of internalized frame of morality that belongs to me, that's based on things that I perceive in society and how I instantiate that in the world. If I was attempting to reconcile morality with the Bible and finding it difficult, that means that I already had morality in me and would have had no one ever shown me the Bible. So I didn't need the grounding, and it didn't come from there. If it came from there, I wouldn't have had the problem. So that was one of the big deconversion pins. That was a pin in the grenade of deconversion for me. That was a big one. That question still hasn't been successfully answered for me by anybody, aside from an assertion that, well, God equals morality. Therefore, there's an objective morality that we must all strive towards. That doesn't explain where my internalized conception of morality came from, or where anybody's does, why any of them differ, and why they vary over time.
Yeah, sure. Well, I get why that probably wouldn't satisfy your personal. I guess your personal. Whatever you're looking for to satisfy your personal craving, or if you will, is that the wrong word to use for your personal
conceptualization of morality, internalized conceptualization of morality? Yeah, you would have one too. We all do. Mm-hmm. You see it clearly in the Bible, and then either attribute it to the Bible. Let's say so, Antonio. When you look at the Bible, do you say this is where my morality comes from? If somebody took this away from me, or I'd never seen it, I wouldn't have any conceptualization of morality.
Sure. Yeah.
So you think if you had never seen the Bible, you would not have any concept of morality?
Well, according to the Christian worldview, the reason why
I'm asking you what you think.
His creation has morality is because he instilled it into us as a reflection of his character. So I wouldn't have apprehended it was God. Clearly, I wouldn't have I may have not conceptualized it.
You may have not given it the attribution of God, but God gave it to you.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. I see where you're going there. You're saying you may not have given it the attribution of God if you didn't know God exists or no one had ever shown you a Bible. But based on your belief system as it exists now, you believe that it was given to you. It was dawned upon you by God. So God kind of injected you with a conceptualization of morality. And that's the reason that it exists inside of you. So if that's the reason that it exists inside of you, why are there inconsistencies? Why is it not uniform amongst all people in all situations and all scenarios throughout time?
Well, the answer to that is in Christianity. Is that we live in a fallen world. People employ their own.
So
people employ.
So they rail against it. Then, so you believe that they know it, but choose to act differently. Well,
yeah. It says in Romans, somewhere in Romans 1:18, roughly. I can't remember the exact verse off the top of my head, but it talks about how they suppress the truth and unrighteousness. And that would explain, why people go after their own truths, why people,
Romans 1:20
want to look for their own explanations for life, and it's just people are in rebellion against God. So Christianity has the answer for why there's so many different worldviews.
You have to attribute a lot to other people's minds that you don't know in order for that to make sense. You have to give attribution to people. You have to say, not only do I know where morality comes from, but I know the reason you are acting in deference to my conceptualization of morality. I not only know where morality came from for everybody, I know the reason that everybody else acts differently. Antonio, know the minds of everyone else on earth who acts inconsistently from me. That's a lot of knowledge.
I do, but I wouldn't say that I do, but the
Bible just
attested quite clearly who does.
Because the Bible said.
Yeah.
The Bible said that everybody else has to be lying.
It's true. I'm not looking to anybody's motives, and I would say there's a particular level of my fleshly existence, which I would say I really don't want to believe people are lying or people are being dishonest or anything like that. I admit that's a shortcoming I have as a Christian in my flesh, but at the end of the day, I know what's quite clear in the scriptures. I know what God says. So if I'm going to be a consistent Christian and hold to a standard, again, all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge are hidden in Him. If I'm going to hold to that standard consistently, I got to see from what He says, not my own personal wants and feelings. You see what I mean?
Mm.
Sure. Yeah. But you're allowing yourself to have a lens to view the intentions, knowledge, understanding, motivations of others that is jaded and skewed. Because if even one other person does not have that same conceptualization anywhere in the world, if there's one person who wasn't innately imbued with that knowledge and is making the active decision in their life to act against it, even though there's cultural variations, and if that happened anywhere even once throughout time, then it's a direct contradiction. It's a direct contradiction.
Well, I mean,
the only way that you can reconcile that is to assert attributes of other people and to assume the contents of their mind, their character, and the reason that they make decisions.
Well, yeah, sure. Outside the Christian worldview, you can ask that question externally. As a Christian,
valid question.
Again, I wouldn't. What's that?
I think it's a fair question or a fair statement.
I'm not saying it's an unfair question. I'm just saying that we can't ask that, within the same worldview. All I would say is that, in my everyday experience, when I'm talking to non-believers, I have a desire to want to apprehend why they reject God. I have a desire to see it, that it's really just maybe that they simply don't know. Maybe they just had came across a really bad experience. I really want to cling to that. I'm not going to see. That's my own human experience.
I'd like to ask a question.
The Bible says we already know.
Here's what I would like to know. If the Bible didn't actually say that, Antonio, if that verse about people rejecting God wasn't in the Bible, would anything in your observations, in your experiences with people, would lead you to conclude that everybody on earth was rejecting God?
That's a good question.
If the Bible did not specifically reveal that?
If it didn't say that, would there be any observations in your own personal accord that would lead you to that conclusion?
Well, in my worldview, that's not a possibility. That's a hypothetical, so I can't even entertain that.
But there was a time and place where you didn't actually know that verse existed, right? Would be possible to conclude.
Well, there's a certain a psychological maturity that you don't have when you're a kid. Clearly, there's certain things that you don't know why you don't know. Like, for instance, like, you know that you can eat, you know how to eat, but you don't know how you know it. So you have a psychological maturity as you mature and get older, and things like this, acquire knowledge, so on and so forth.
But I'm wondering because if we're letting the Bible tell us like facts about the world, like facts that we could, observe and examine, and if there were things that were there or weren't there, then it's kind of controlling our view of reality in a sense. And I'm wanting to know if the Bible's view of reality, because it is a model of reality that disagrees with other models of reality, if I want to know if the Bible's model of reality is accurate and is true, how can I verify that if it doesn't match with my observations and my experiences?
Well, it depends on what your scope of verification is. Is your scope of verification your sensory experience? Is your scope of verification something other than yourself? It just depends on what that verification would be.
I mean, is the Bible required for my verification?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Is the Bible, do I have to have knowledge of the Bible to verify things about reality like that? For example, like that people are rejecting God. Do I have to know about the Bible in order for me to conclude that?
Well, the Bible makes it very clear that we're born sinners. So when we reject Him, whether we do it consciously or unconsciously, we're still rejecting His revelation in some way. So I wouldn't say you would have to have.
You know this from the Bible, right? Like, I know that you know this from the Bible, but I'm asking if your experiences are telling you this. If anything from the outside world has ever told you this.
Well, when we talk about experience, because experience can be defined in a number of different concepts. It can be, my experience in talking to you guys right now. It could be like reading the Bible. I mean, I would have to. Are you saying if I have a different kind of experience? You mean?
Yeah, like I'll give you an example. Like black holes can kind of absorb light, and light is affected by the gravitational pull of black holes. I could live my whole life and not know that to be true, even if it is true, which I think it is true. I think there's evidence for that, but that could still be true, and I would have never known because I never found a way to verify that or even think about that. But I'd have to read the research of other people in order to know that's true and look at what they've said is true. I'm saying as a fact, the fact that people reject God, like as a fact, if you didn't have the Bible, if that was not a thing in your life that you could look at and examine, would any of your experiences confirm to you in your worldview that people were rejecting God?
Well, I would have to look at the creator-creation distinction there because, like, you looked at black holes as an analogous point. The thing about black holes is that they are a contingent element, So it's possible to not know about things that are contingent in our experience. But when we talk about which is the ground of all being, God in the Christian framework would be the ground of all being. So it's not possible to not know or to not experience God on some level.
Not possible. How do you know that?
Well, because there's two instances of revelation that we can account for in the Christian worldview. First is natural revelation. We just look at the world around us, the sun, the stars, the planet rabbits, stuff like that. And then there's also the spiritual revelation. We've already discussed that.
Okay.
Just look at the Holy Scriptures from Genesis to Revelation.
Okay, let me ask you this. What about your natural revelations came to that conclusion? Like what part of your natural revelations gave that conclusion?
From an evidentialist framework, people would say, they'll do something like the cosmological argument, for instance, like whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe begins to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. I think outside the Christian biblical framework, at best that can only lead you to like deism. But in my experience, when we ground that in a presuppositional framework, it makes sense that if things begin to exist, they will have to ultimately come from an unconditionally non-created eternal cause.
Okay. I think we got a little bit off topic from what we were talking about.
Did we just parlay into a kalam?
Yeah.
Well, what I'm getting at is, as a Christian, when I look at the world around me,
okay, but
I see that.
This is a really good question. Do I have to be a Christian to come to the same conclusions that you do?
Well, on a particular semantic level, no, but on a metaphysical level, you do.
Because I have like God kind of influences me, or is like doing things, and I have experiences of God. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, when they say the
you
same
already know he
conclusion,
exists.
When they say like the same conclusion, they mean like 1 + 1 = 2, that we just have the same answer, or they mean the same conclusion as in
or just
we both are operating from the same metaphysical framework.
I don't even think that. I just think observations. I think you can make the same observations as me, and we don't have to have the same metaphysical framework at all. Like, I think you can observe me dropping my phone here, and we don't have to have the same metaphysical framework at all. I think you can still make that observation.
Well, yeah. Like if like for me, if my atheist mailman delivers something to me, and then I tell him, that's a wonderful blue sky up there. That's just a fantastic day, and he says, "Yeah, I agree with you." I'm not going to have a metaphysical conversation with him right there. I mean, because that's not the time and place. We could both observe the sky. We'll just say that in the Christian framework, the reason why he can is because he lives in God's world. But metaphysically, we don't have a grounding for that. Although I'm not saying he can't observe the sky, see it's up there. I'm just saying that he rejects the foundation for why he can.
Okay, even if he rejects the foundation, though, you could still make the observation, right? Like, you agree with me on that?
Well, only because he lives in God's world, but he doesn't give that revelation, the honor and glory back to God, in which he does.
Okay, but why can't he do that, though? Why is he allowed to make that observation and still reject God's world? Because it seems to me that if it really is required that that this foundation has to be true, then it seems to me that he couldn't make that observation at all without confirming that in some level. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Well, independent of God, none of us can even so much as bat our eyelash, twitch our finger, even speak now. God upholds all things by the power of his will. So outside of that framework, he cannot do it. But the reason why people do these things is because God is merciful and he allows them to do these things.
I hear a lot of interpretations of like why and like why this is happening and why it's, but I don't know the how. I'm not sure how you know that. I'll give you an example of this. Like, you say that I'm rejecting God right now. I have a call-in show. If God really wanted to talk to me, I have an open line that's open every Friday at 7. I have yet to receive a call from God, at least the Christian conception of God. I think that's the example where I can show where God isn't contacting me unless he's been somehow picking up the lines and I've been talking to him. But at that point, obviously I'm not aware of it because I don't have any memory in my experience. So I'm not sure, if you see what I'm getting at here, there's common observations that you and I can have about the world. I'm not observing that people are rejecting God. Shannon and I don't come to that conclusion. And we're wondering, how are you coming to this conclusion and is it justified? Because I think from Shannon and I's perspective, you would not have came to that conclusion unless the Bible gave you that conclusion first.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, when we're talking about ultimate frameworks from which we reason, the only way something can be, like if we're talking about an ultimate framework, an ultimate concept of being for everything in a Christian worldview, which is God, the only way you could talk about the justification for that, for the ultimate justifier, is by the ultimate justifier. He is the self-attesting ultimate justifier for everything. How would you verify the ultimate authority without it? It would be an incoherent notion, because if there was something outside of him to justify it, then that would be the ultimate authority.
Yeah, I don't know if there is an ultimate authority in that sense. And if there is, I'm not sure how people could access that. I think we can have, like we were talking about earlier, beliefs that could be more or less justified that have, better reasons than others. I don't think that means that we can have the best reasons necessarily and know with 100% confidence that something is true. But I don't know. I'm not sure if having an ultimate authority in that sense is necessary for the kind of knowledge of observations that we're talking about here.
I don't even think it's
well, I don't want to take up too much time. I know you guys got to get to your next caller.
I appreciate that, Antonio.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was a great conversation.
I am Objectively Dan. This is Truth Wanted.
He's not important. He's not important, Antonio.
I hope we could talk about this sometime, and I was happy to talk with you again too, Shannon.
This is an interesting conversation, and you've been very polite about this, and I've enjoyed this. Cy10 Brugenkate and I talked on Twitter one time, and he said he might be wanting to come on Truth Wanted. I only mentioned him because if we're talking about presuppositionalism, I haven't had...
He's much better at this than me, for sure.
Well, I haven't had... I don't know if we've really talked about presuppositionalist stuff as much as we could on Truth Wanted, but I think it's something we could delve into a bit more later. But yeah, thanks for calling. This was kind of fun. I don't know if either of us made it. I feel like Shannon wants to say a little bit more.
Oh, if I say anything, it'll last another hour and a half. I was going to delve more into, how I'm all about internalized processes. And my questions were going to revolve around, how does a believer and a non-believer discern if both of us are aware of God's existence? Yeah. Because the Bible says, I am aware and you are aware.
I didn't even intend the call to go on.
No,
it's a fascinating conversation. That's a sign of a good conversation.
This is
There's
good.
No need to apologize.
You don't need to apologize at all. This has been a fantastic convo, but I think it's about time for us to wrap this up. But thanks again, Antonio. Maybe next time when Shannon Q comes on, because Shannon, you're going to come back, right?
Okay, once soccer's done. As soon as soccer's done. Stop having them on Fridays and I can come back.
Okay, Shannon. We'll just Okay.
Change your entire schedule.
Antonio, thanks for calling, man.
No problem. Have a good night, guys.
All right. And our other caller that was on the line actually dropped the call while we were talking to Antonio. So we're about done here for Truth Wanted. Shannon, what did you think?
It was so much fun.
Did you enjoy that?
That part where Drew called, that was awful. But aside from that, everything was great.
Yeah. Well, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on. Again, you're more than welcome to come back anytime. Please, guys, go check out Shannon Q's channel if you haven't already. Go click subscribe. She's great. She's making great content, and she's having great conversations with people. Shannon, if people want to find you, where can they go?
I am Shannon QTube on Facebook, Q''tube, and I am on Twitter at Shan with 2 N's _Q0. My YouTube channel is Shannon Q, and I have the rest of the stuff is on my channel. If you want to find all my social media, just it's on my most recent video. Go there. I am the garbage at marketing. I'm garbage.
Well, guys,
I'm good.
Go help her out and market for her channel more. I think we're going to have some of the links in the description as well. And if you're watching this live, we're probably having some nice person post them in the chat. If you want to talk to me, you can email me at truth@atheist-community.org. That is the email. I check it often. If you just want to talk to me, if you want to ask about the show, and any requests to have me on any of your other programs, that is the line to go to. You can subscribe right here on the Truth Wanted YouTube channel. Please do. We do shows every Friday night, live at 7, excuse me. We are also available on Spotify, iTunes. We're on Twitch. We got all kinds of places where you can find us. We don't have merch yet. We've been talking about merch just a little bit. If you're interested in that, I do want to hear if you are. Please let me know on Twitter or send me an email too. My Twitter, by the way, is at ObjectivelyDan. I'm pretty active on there. Please follow me on there and talk to me there. I do enjoy that. Shannon, was there anything else you want to say before we go?
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. I love just talking to people. This is my favorite. I love it. This is so much fun.
Well, this episode this has been full of twists and turns and hot takes and all kinds of stuff. I really enjoyed it, but I'm tired, and I think I'm ready for a drink. So thanks again for you guys for tuning in to Truth Wanted. Remember to always keep wanting the truth. We'll see you next time.